it back, but it's more than basic. It's a portion of his rap, but the core is ancient. It's supported like a pack of some more observations are important, like the fact that we're bored of fake shit. More creative, have the floor, so take it. Travel to the core is a normal placement. Tattoos on my
Hey guys, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. This will post one day after Thanksgiving, which is great because I wouldn't want you to hear what I have to say about Thanksgiving before you actually have Thanksgiving. That would be wrong of me.
Would it?
Yeah, it would, because me and Thanksgiving don't exactly get along every year. Actually, we haven't gotten along any year since I was probably in third grade. There's a particular reason for that, and we're going to talk about that today because that's what I want to talk about. I'm wanting to talk about this for a long time. I'm really excited today. I've got notes.
Interesting.
Which I never make notes. I got
Seriously?
notes for
You got
this.
some good notes.
Because we're going to get into some things. And trigger warning, guys. If you are one of those people who love to live in your illusions, maybe don't listen to this whole thing. maybe check out early, because I'm all about ruining the facade and ripping off the curtain today on this episode of Tattoo with Children, which is what you're listening to, Tattoo with Children. I am your host, Flavor Ray, in seat A. Across from me in seat B is the Dread Pirate Benjamin, and across from us both is the Master Turkey Baster, CIO No Pain. Fellas, I am ready to talk a little bit about my childhood. And I want to talk a little about your childhood as well.
Okay.
We're ready for that?
That's
All right.
cool.
So when I was in kindergarten, we were sitting down on a little mat, and our I'm going to say teacher in quotation marks here, because do you have teachers in kindergarten?
Right.
It was really my jailer, my holder. They came to us and said, hey, you put your hand on this paper plate. It's okay. Trace your hand out. All right. I put a little face on it, and they were going to paint the fingers different colors. And oh, look at that, you made a turkey.
Okay.
It's like, why the fuck did I do that? That's stupid. And they said, well, we're going to talk about Turkey Day. Turkey Day? Yeah, Thanksgiving. What? What is that? Well, and then they told me a story. And the story they told me, I will tell you now. And then I want to hear if my story matches the other two people in the room. So the story told me was that sometime in the past, there were a group called the Pilgrims, and they were being religiously persecuted in Europe. And so they decided to leave Europe, and they sailed across the ocean. I don't know where the fuck they were going. And they were in a boat called the Mayflower, and then it landed on a rock called Plymouth. They got out of that rock and immediately began to make a colony where they were all about religious freedom. And then they had a hard time, all right? But there were natives there who saw them having a hard time. And these friendly natives began to teach them how to live in this new land, how to plant crops, how to hunt game, that sort of thing. And as a result, the colony survived. And so the next year, when the colonies were very good at surviving, they decided to invite their native friends to their colony to have a celebratory thank you feast. And they spent 3 days having fun, playing games, playing with the kids, eating food. And to commemorate that event, we do this every year with our family to be thankful, and we call this day Thanksgiving. That sound close to what you guys heard in that same area of life?
Yeah, similar to it.
Any differences?
No, that's about right.
No differences at all, right? Okay. You know, that's what I want to see. I just want to see how pervasive, because I was partially concerned that I was either not remembering it all the way correctly, or that my kindergarten teacher purposely left out all the detail that they told everybody else. Because that was a great story, and I ate it up, right? I thought that was awesome. You know, they came over here, and the natives helped them, and they made friends, right?
Yeah.
and they had food. I liked food, so I was all down for the idea. I was all down for the day. And I didn't see anything wrong with that until about third grade. And in third grade, I met this kid who ended up in my class, and he was from Canada. And we're talking about Thanksgiving, around about Thanksgiving time. And he says, yeah, in Canada, instead of turkey, we have goose. And everyone goes, goose? What is a goose? Is it like a turkey? Like, do you pluck it the same? Do you cook it the same? And they, how big is it? And they're all talking about, like, the differences between goose and turkey. And I'm stuck, literally with my jaw on the floor, staring at the dude. And I chime in, hey, everybody, shut the fuck up. Why the fuck do you know about Thanksgiving in Canada?
Right.
And he goes, well, we have Thanksgiving. He says, shut the fuck up. Keep your goddamn Canuck hands off my shit. That's an American holiday. It came from Plymouth, motherfucker. Learn it.
Okay.
Well, it got me thinking. Maybe my kindergarten teacher left out a few details of a Thanksgiving. If in Canada, they've had it for a long time.
Okay.
And so I started researching Thanksgiving, trying to figure out if what I knew was the truth. And over the course of literally a solid decade of reading about Thanksgiving, I eventually figured out that no, I didn't know the truth. In fact, I didn't know any part of the story whatsoever. And from what I just learned by talking to you two, you didn't know any part of the story either, which made me think that no one ever learned any part of the story about Thanksgiving when they were supposed to. And if you didn't go out and look for it the way I did, probably nobody corrected any of the details that were wrong. So, as a service to myself and the universe and America and the world, I'm going to correct those details for you today. How about that? All right, fellas. So before I get started, are there any details that pop off the top of your head right now that you are either curious about if that was true or not, or if you already know that it's false? You got something you want to come up off top before?
I mean,
dive into it.
The news that Thanksgiving existed before Plymouth is that's new to me.
Okay. That was new to me too at the time. Like it's something that I've learned, and actually, that's one of the weirdest ones because I think that's the reason why they tell you the story when you're in kindergarten, because if they told you the story for the first time when you're in fourth grade, you'll immediately call bullshit.
Yeah.
Because it's basically harvest time at Thanksgiving, and people have been celebrating a good harvest for as long as people have been making good harvests. I mean, that's what you do.
Okay.
You plant crops in the spring and summer. Then when they come up in the fall and you pull them out the ground and you can all eat, you're happy as fuck because winter's right here.
It's actually a secondary harvest. The primary spring harvest happens in late September usually, and then but the winter crops, right? The ones that really get you through, they come up a little bit later in the year. Your squashes and your things like that. So it really provides the basis for what we consider to be Thanksgiving. A lot of those foods that you eat.
Yeah,
at that time.
particularly at those upper latitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because that shit's life or death.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so people have and I'm not talking about Europeans. I'm talking about everybody in the world.
Yeah.
Native Americans, Chinese Americans, all the American. No, I'm fucking with you. But everybody around the world, everyone always celebrates a good harvest right before winter because you realize that we actually could live through this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
I was pretty certain at the beginning of November we're all going to die, but it turns out that's not true.
What really always got me about the story, and this is probably more my stupidity than anything else, they landed on a rock.
Right?
How the hell do you land on a rock?
It's difficult.
They never
you
explained that
have to
to
have
me.
a pinpoint accuracy with your boat to hit the rock right on
the rock.
You know what the great thing about that part of the story is? They actually have a Plymouth Rock in Plymouth.
Yes, they do.
There's a stone sitting on the ground. It's like, hey, there's the Plymouth Rock. if that's not the dumbest fucking thing you ever heard in your life, like how on earth? So you're saying that these people landed on this shore, saw a rock, and went, "Hey, that one's for Plymouth," and then built a colony around it?
Right.
You know, I mean, that's the story, right? They get off the boat, and I guess they had some lumber or some shit, and they built houses, and then they started planting and realized that the crops wouldn't grow. Like, that's just, you know, the crops wouldn't grow, and they couldn't figure out how, and the Americans came to them and said, "Hey, you need to bury a fish with that in order to make it, you know, fertilize it."
Right.
Like, all of that shit, like...
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the story, but that is not, in fact, how it happened. So for starters, harvest festivals are common across cultures. There's nothing special about them whatsoever. Okay, so that's the first thing I learned. B, second thing I learned was that they weren't given all that much advice by the Indians
Okay.
as far as how to survive.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't as if, like, the whole thing was, like, the big thing always, I remember it reenacted this, where, you know, you're trying to grow corn. They always said it was corn. They tried to grow corn, and the corn wouldn't grow, and they couldn't figure out why. And so then a Native American came. This is in a textbook. The Native American came and took 2 fish and put it next to the corn seed. And then you bury that, and all of a sudden the corn grew.
Right.
And it was because they were like, you know, we've learned about fertilizing by accident. Well, that's actually a European technique that the Indians never used. Like, I mean, it's
Really?
just, yeah. That
The Indians didn't drop the fish in the hole,
no,
but there's pictures of the Indians dropping the fish in the hole.
Never happened.
Like paintings.
never happened. That's just a bold-faced lie.
Fake news is that old?
Yes, it is that fucking, like, this blew my mind too.
But then why did they picture?
Because, like, actually,
Why did
I don't know actually why this part of it, why they chose lie. Like, that's the weird thing about myths. A lot of the time,
Yeah.
people lie about shit they don't have to lie about.
Right.
You know, it's like I wouldn't have, you know, wondered what specific advice they were given if you hadn't said anything.
Right.
But now that you said something, I gotta check it. I gotta fact check your ass.
Especially in kindergarten. Like, and I'm sitting here trying to come up
Right.
with reasons, like things that I would have questioned. And the truth of the matter is, in kindergarten, there's very little I would have questioned. If you had told me that Thanksgiving, right, was just, hey, you know, we eat a lot of food and we celebrate what we're thankful for because it's the right thing to do, I would have said, yeah, okay, great.
Right.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Right? You had me at eating a lot of food, you know?
Yeah.
But no, that like for some reason there
But
had to be a
they
whole
told
story
you this
involved.
tale. They told you this tale about it. But there was a reason it came about that way. Okay, and so that was the other thing. It was like, you know, and so now you like so if they didn't give that much advice, then what did they say? What actually happened? And what was the motivation?
Okay.
Okay, before we get to that, I want to get to another interesting point, which is I told you about Plymouth, all right? Plymouth, this thing in Plymouth took place in 1621. The help that the Indians gave the colony happened in 1620. So 1620, 1621.
Gotcha.
And so we're basing our Thanksgiving off what happened in 1621.
Okay.
Well, that may not be the day that was the Thanksgiving basis.
Okay.
It could be the day, but there are candidates. Okay? So let's run through the candidates in order of timeline. So the Seloy tribe in Florida met with some colonists and had a little get together where they ate food and prayed together in 1565 with the Spanish colonists.
Okay.
And that could be.
Oh, Spanish colonists?
Yeah, Spanish, not British, not Pilgrims. Okay,
Okay.
so yeah, Spanish colonists.
Okay.
That was 1565, so that's well before 1620. In the Berkeley 100 section of Virginia, in 1619, which is 1 year before the Plymouth colony, there was a little celebration with the natives and the settlers there in Berkeley 100, Virginia. That was basically they took but that wasn't a harvest. That was a catch. They caught a bunch of oysters that year. And so they're like, "Hey, we got all these oysters. Let's eat with the Indians."
That doesn't sound like something I want to celebrate.
But they did.
But they did.
But they absolutely did. And so they had a little oyster bake, and that could have been it. But that's probably not it. But it could have been it. Then we're up 1620 Plymouth. All right, we're going into that. But here's the thing about the 1621. Later, we called that Thanksgiving. At the time, they wouldn't have called that Thanksgiving because that honestly, like I just said, it was the harvest thing. It wasn't special. They were just eating. But in 1623, that colony in Plymouth did have the day where they called Thanksgiving. But it wasn't about eating. It was just about praying or giving thanks.
Right.
Okay.
So we could be talking about the 1623 day of prayer.
Okay.
Or we could be talking about John Winthrop. Now, who was John Winthrop? John Winthrop was the governor of Massachusetts in 1637, and he declared a day of Thanksgiving in 1637 to celebrate what happened in Mystic, Connecticut, when the settlers there slaughtered 700 Pequot Indians,
Okay.
Was
men,
Mystic
women, and
Pizza
children. No,
available at that time?
no, it wasn't.
Okay.
Unless it
Continue.
was made of Native American flesh, because that's what they were after. They killed a bunch of men, women, and children, and John Winthrop said, "Hey, that's fucking great. Let's thank the Lord for these new slaves we can sell."
Okay.
And so that was an official day declared for Thanksgiving. Is that the day that we use to commemorate the current Thanksgiving? It's probably unfair to say that,
Okay.
but it could be.
It was an official act.
It was an official. It was an official of a state in the union calling, or what would be a state in the union calling a day of Thanksgiving, and it was kind of the first time that ever happened. So there's some reason to think that it was based on the slaughter of children.
Okay.
Okay, but that's not what Abraham Lincoln said in 1865 when he declared the official day. The day he was talking about was in 1621 with the Plymouth colonists.
Okay.
And we're going to get into the Pilgrims, quotation marks, Pilgrims, when we get back.
My name ain't Mikey, but yeah, I rock. You know why? Because I don't give a fuck. That's why it doesn't matter whether...
Hi, we're back with Tattoo with Children. We're talking about Thanksgiving, or the real Thanksgiving, if you would allow. Because I believe there are some myths that need to be corrected. And I was just talking about, the day that is Thanksgiving, the original first Thanksgiving that we attribute, may not actually be the actual first Thanksgiving. But that's kind of a minor quibble, to tell you the truth. Let's start with let's do a major quibble. Let's start with why did the Pilgrims come to the Americas? Why were they coming to Plymouth?
Jesus.
Jesus is what Ben says. Mike, what do you say?
I was always taught that it was to escape persecution of the religious variety.
Okay, so Jesus to escape persecution of religious variety. In other words, we want to worship our way, our God, our way. You're not allowing me to do that, so I'm going to go to a land where I can do that. We're escaping your oppression, right? Well, that may not be the truth. Actually, I know for a fact it's not the truth. That's not why they left.
Okay.
They left, there was a religious argument, okay? And so they formed a group called the Separatists. And the Separatists decided, hey, we are going to not have freedom of religion. That is exactly what they did not want. Precisely what they did not want. What they wanted was a theocracy. They wanted the exact opposite of religious freedom. They wanted a locked down religious government where you can only worship one way. And they weren't able to do that with all of these other people who thought different things.
Primarily the King of England, who had formed the, well, not himself, but they had been living under the Anglican Church
Right.
as the official state religion.
Right. They already had religions that were in place that would take exception to them forming their own religious theocracy.
Okay.
And so they're like, well, okay, fuck it. We'll just go form our kingdom elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's what they took across the ocean with that in mind as far as their government concerned. But the real driving force behind the separatists was, we need to make money, guys. We need to go and get the bag. We need to go and get some loot. And I hear from the Spanish and from the French that there's a lot of fucking money to be had over this new land. And I'm going to go get it.
Okay.
And so they got
I can buy that for $1.
So they got into 3 boats, and they're coming to get paid, baby. That's why it had nothing to do with Jesus. It had nothing to do with religious freedom, and nothing to do with the prosecution.
Are you saying that
persecution at all.
Jesus doesn't like money?
Jesus said he doesn't like money. He said for a fact not like money.
That's not true. He
He
just
said-
doesn't like money inside of the temple.
Now listen, we're going to have
Well-
to get into the religious argument about this on another podcast. But
That
I
we
just
will
threw
get into
that out
that.
there.
We will get it. Yes, I will say that Jesus doesn't really like money. He doesn't care for it. He'll use it if he has to, but normally he'll just ask good old dad to provide for his friends. So so they came to Americas to hunt down cash. They were not called pilgrims. That's another thing. The word pilgrim wasn't associated with this group of people until like 1880.
Okay.
They were the separatists, and so the separatists arrive in Plymouth, and what they walked into was a very tense political situation. It was not a empty land.
How are there politics in this
Yeah,
new world?
I thought there was only a rock.
Yeah,
was the Rock.
that's not true at all. That's a bold-faced
The
lie.
Rock,
that
the
sounds-
Rock had very strong political views.
That sounds like a very white person thing to do. It's like literally you're in the wilderness and you walk up on a rock and you're like, well, God damn it, I disagree with you. And your wife's like, who the fuck are you talking to? And you're like, go back in the kitchen.
So they walk up and they didn't find a fucking rock for starters. Like what they found was a village. Okay, they walked into a village with rolling fields and where obviously people were cultivating crops, and where they had like a livestock area, and they had cooking pits and they had kitchens and they had homes. They were empty though.
Okay.
Everything it was a whole village completely empty.
Where were the people?
The people-
See now you're
the first
now-
ghost town in the New World.
See, this is starting to sound like an M. Night Shyamalan film.
Well, it sounds like that because that's exactly what it was.
Okay,
Like
continue.
M. Night Shyamalan must have gotten some of this out of history books.
Shyamalan.
Not
Shyamalan
history
ding dong.
books, but he had to do history research because
Okay.
the books don't say
All right.
this.
All right,
So they
continue.
show up, and the village is empty. And the reason why the village is empty is because everyone who built it and lived there are now dead. They're all corpses. The reason being because the plagues from previous contacts have wiped out a good portion of the native population already.
Oh, so smallpox blankets.
Smallpox, not the blankets per se, and not necessarily smallpox. It could have been a lot of other diseases. It turns out that the native, and no one really knows why, but native populations in the Americas, north and south, are particularly susceptible to bugs from overseas. Like things that were about 12% fatal in Europe are 85% fatal in the Americas.
Okay.
And no one's quite sure why.
Okay.
And so thousands of people were already dead.
Okay. Hold back up.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to understand. This is not a point of contention.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm understanding the story the way you're telling it,
Mm-hmm.
are you inferring that the people there in this ghost village had died because of other Europeans?
Yes, previous Europeans.
Okay, but I thought the people that landed on the rock were the first ones.
Hell no.
No,
they
I
weren't
mean the
ones.
first ones in that area.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, the Spanish had already been there. The Spanish had been taking slaves out of there for a while.
I knew the Spanish had already been there, but I thought the Spanish had landed further south.
The Vikings were there
They-
like hundreds of years before.
Yeah. They had landed further south, but they also landed north. Like they had the whole coastline.
Okay. All right. Okay. I wanted to understand the part of the story we were at. So
So the French and the Spanish had been coming to this and going and having interchange with the native peoples there for a long time, because there were many different native peoples there.
why is the common? I mean, I guess the only reason I'm getting stuck on this point is in or around that time, the British Empire did dominate a quarter of the globe. I mean, that's historic.
Not quite yet.
No, they're not there yet.
Later on, they did.
Later on. Right now, it's really the Spanish and French and the Dutch
Okay,
are really kind of fucking the globe hardcore right now.
but they're not staying. Like
No,
they're
they
just
are
like
staying.
they're like going and fucking and coming back.
No, they're staying. I mean,
Yeah,
it was, there was.
but from all the history books, when we got here, there weren't a bunch of Spaniards
Well,
here.
what you
Now-
got to understand
right,
about
right.
that's not because they weren't staying. They were staying in places where they could grow shit.
Yeah, they were staying in smarter places like Florida.
Like, New England
Okay.
is a fucking dumb place to just land and live.
Well, I mean, I don't like it, but you
It's
know,
rocky,
Some
it's-
people like it.
Now
it's
listen,
shitty. It's cold.
you got to understand. At this point, the Dutch were actually a little bit further south. They had,
Yeah.
I think, they had already established at least a small presence
Yeah.
in New Amsterdam,
Right, I re-
which
I re-
became New York City.
Yeah, they were
Okay.
there. They
All
were
right,
there in
all
large
right,
quantities.
So continue.
Okay, so so basically they show up at a ready-made situation for a colony. Like they didn't come off the boat and build houses or anything. They showed up in a place where it's kind of hard to fuck up. They just moved in.
Well, I mean, it's a little freaky, at least. Like
Yeah.
psychologically,
I
they
mean,
could
it's
have
I
been
mean,
disturbing.
were the corpses still in the houses? Because if they were, that's kind of some work there to move dead bodies.
No. They had all been buried. Like basically, it was just empty land. Like no one had. But the thing about it is, once somebody dies of a disease in a house, after you get the bodies out, you don't go back to that house.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So you're saying they did a real stupid thing right off the bat.
Okay. Who?
Look up the separatists. If I'm understanding, because I mean, if I show up in a place and there's a bunch of empty houses,
Yeah.
I don't move in.
Yeah.
That's that's freaky as shit, man.
Yeah, it's scary. Like I'm thinking ghost house as well, but no, they just moved right in. And to your credit, they did start dying almost immediately. Not a disease, but of starvation. Like New England is not hospitable for their way of life off top.
Like when you research it, the reason they started dying of starvation was because number one, you have a 3-month trip across the Atlantic.
Exactly. They weren't in good shape when they landed.
When they landed, they weren't in good shape, and when they landed, it wasn't springtime;
No, it wasn't.
it was already fall.
Okay.
You know, so
It's
they
not
had
time to
no
plant.
provisions and no way to get provisions before the winter hit.
Exactly.
All right. I'm not arguing your points, by the way. I'm just
Yeah.
a couple of things are sticking in my head.
And so, they're
yeah,
looking.
continue.
It's looking like they're all going to die.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, but luckily for them, they were in a tense political situation before they got there. So these natives had been dying in large masses, and that threw off the power balances between the different groups of Indians. And so basically, all the Native Americans that are already there that don't get along with each other are trying to make alliances to shore up their defenses because their populations are lower. And so you have this group called the Wampanoag. And the Wampanoag are made of several different groups, but they all confer with each other, and they agree on one single chief of chiefs, so to speak. And that chief of chiefs' name is Massasoit. Massasoit is a brilliant leader, but he's in a tough spot because he honestly does not have enough allies to handle his enemies.
What was the name again?
Massasoit.
No, what was the name of the tribe?
Wampanoag.
Was part of their problem that their name was stupid?
I mean, I'm sure makes perfect sense in whatever language they speak.
Okay, continue the story.
In my language, it doesn't sound great. Sounds like something you might see off Rocky and Bullwinkle. But like for them, it was probably it meant great, glorious tribe of the heavens or something.
Right.
Like that.
Well, as far as Indian tribe names go, it isn't the best.
Super weird.
Even that. I mean, Mohawk really has they have the lock on the best name of the Indian tribes.
The guy that wrote this book is on Instagram.
Nice.
Okay, continue the story.
Okay, yeah, it has nothing to do with anything.
Tense political situation. Wampanoag chieftain Massasoit is dealing with some shit.
He's looking for allies.
All right,
and
I'm with you.
But then they have some history with Europeans landing, and so they know that this could be bad, but it could be good. Europeans typically have great weapons, right? And they're usually willing to deal. And so they're watching these guys dying, and they're like, all right, we can let them die. That would probably be a good thing. Or if we help them, if they live and they ally with us, we have a ready alliance of potentially strong allies against our enemies.
That have good weapons.
They got good
Really
weapons,
good weapons.
and they like to deal, which is important. They like to trade.
Okay.
And so Massasoit made the decision to keep them alive. And so
The separatists.
the separatists.
Okay. I'm
And
with
so
you.
Count Dooku's men.
they brought them provisions through the winter.
Okay.
They just brought them food and
Which, in accord with ancient law, is not shocking.
it's not shocking at all.
Okay. All right. We're with you.
They brought them food and got them through the winter. Okay. And so when it came time to plant, there were enough people there to plant. And so they planted. And then they had a harvest, as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And when harvest time came around, now remember, he just kept them alive. They hadn't done anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
And so harvest time comes around, and they start pulling stuff out of the ground. They're like, hey, we're going to live this next time on our own because we got the food.
That's a good thing.
So they're all gathering in their ready-made village of Plymouth, and they've got the food they've pulled out of the ground. And then literally 100 Wampanoags surround their village. Okay? Like, I want you to picture this.
Okay.
You're in your village, you got your harvest up, and it's piled up. You're like, hey, guys, it's great. You look up, and you see one native, then 2, then 30, then 40, then 100 people surrounding your village. And your village has about 50
People or warriors?
warriors.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the village population size is about 50 men, women, and children.
Yes.
Right. And you're surrounded by a bunch of warriors. So fighting able, you're probably 3-1 at best.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Massasoit strolls in and goes, hey, guys, this looks great. I like what you've done with the place. Let's talk about alliance. And they're like, alliance? But yeah. We know, we like the way your skin's all light, and so we want to help you, and you help me, and we can do a thing. And the senator's looking at this situation and going, all right, if we say no, they're going to kill everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at Massasoit, whoever is the leader at the Plymouth at the time, forget his name.
Probably John Smith.
It's not John Smith. It's not John Smith. He's not talking to fucking Squanto.
It's a
He's
pretty
talking to
good guess.
Massasoit. And so he looks
Will Smith?
at Will Smith. Could be Will
Something
Smith.
Smith.
Something for sure. And so they look at it and say, hey, what if we say no? Say, well, if you say no, I think we're entitled to at least 60% of this harvest, since you
Yeah.
wouldn't be here.
For
Right.
feeding your asses.
In the winter.
And so now they realize if they say no, they're not going to live regardless.
Okay. I'm with
And
you.
so they say, sure. Would you, since you're here, you can help us celebrate?
Our new alliance.
Our new alliance.
that you were forced us into.
And they say, oh, sure, well, what have you got? And it was like, well, we've got this food, but you got like 100 people here. I said, don't worry, man, I got you. And so they bring out a whole shit ton of deer that they had killed just for this occasion. Because they've been
feed
watching
100 warriors somehow.
They've been watching the whole time. See, that's what the separatists realized is that they've been watching them for months. They've been looking at them the whole time.
Yeah, they got better intelligence.
And so they pull out all this food that they've brought, and then that's when their children come say, hey, the kids are here. And
Please don't kill us. There are children.
there's going to be a days of festival. And so that's what happened. They spent 3 days literally drinking and eating, playing games, and make it nice to celebrate this new alliance that they've formed at the point of a lance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
this all sounds reasonable. I'm not
that's
understanding the problem.
There's absolutely no problem whatsoever, other than the fact that that's not the story I was told. It's way different than what I was told. I thought that they were friendly friends. No, they weren't friends at all. See, that's the important part. They're not friends. They're not. They're about as friendly as the KKK and the Jews. Like this is not a friendly situation. This is you do what I say or I kill you.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So, cut to a generation later. Massasoit's son is now chief. His name is. I have to look at my notes.
I like that you're referring to
Yeah,
notes.
I love the notes.
I feel very professional today.
His name is King Philip is what the Europeans call him. His name is I can't find his name. Where did I put it? I didn't. I just have Massasoit's son. They called him King Philip. He was not called King Philip in his native tongue. But he is chief of the Wampanoag, and the Pilgrims have been reinforced over this generation of people.
That would be
Metacomet.
Metacomet, that's him.
Okay.
And they have been very much reinforced. They've been reinforced with weapons and people. And so they're throwing their weight around, as they do. And Metacomet and his Wampanoag warriors run foul of them. And war breaks out. And this is a gigantic fucking war. Like, this is one of the first really fuck you wars in the New Americas where both sides are hurt real bad.
Okay.
They burned down some cities in Massachusetts that weren't rebuilt. They killed probably 50% of the native population and 30% of the colonists. Like it was a rough situation. Metacomet was eventually he got ran through by the Mohawks. He tried to get hope with the Mohawks, and the Mohawks fucked him in the ass. He was shot on a hill. The colonists in Plymouth then beheaded him and put his head on a pike, and the head on a pike stayed in the middle of Plymouth for 25 years. So that is the story of the Plymouth Thanksgiving. The end of the story is an Indian head on a stick in the middle of Plymouth.
Okay. I'm with you.
Not quite the image that you want for Thanksgiving, and
Right.
so in about the 1830s,
Yeah.
the people of New England just rewrote the story.
Right.
Like they literally just rewrote the story.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty
It is
bad
something.
story.
It's an awful story, and they
Yeah.
didn't like it. But they do like Thanksgiving because they do the harvest festivals. And they're like, all right, so we're just going to change the story to match what we do.
Right.
And so they did that in 1830, and then about 45 years later, Abraham Lincoln he's in the middle of a war. He needs to do something to unite his country, and so he declares a day of Thanksgiving, 1865, to celebrate our victories in Vicksburg and other places. And that's how Thanksgiving happened officially.
Okay.
Okay, so we get our official Thanksgiving based on a lie told about some true crime stories in the early Americas.
I just maybe it's just so maybe what if it's not as bad as you're letting on? What if it's just
Sure.
rebranding?
Yeah, that could be called rebranding. But when your first brand is Slaughter of the Innocents, and your second brand is Friendly Native Encounter,
Yeah.
it feels more like a lie.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel authentic.
The listener can't see that I barely kept it together for that sentence.
He really did, guys.
I did a really good job of sounding serious because I clearly do not believe it was rebranding.
No.
But, you like to hear both sides of this. I mean,
Like,
you really can't hear both sides of the story because, unfortunately,
the other side's dead.
well, and interestingly enough, I just wanted to make this point real quick. Something stuck in my brain about King Philip, and it was not what you would normally think. And I went to Wikipedia and confirmed that his children were sold into slavery and transported to the West Indies.
Yes,
So,
Which is the Caribbean.
the
modern day.
Caribbean.
So that's just an interesting. That's just an interesting point that I want to make. There is that King Philip's shit didn't work out, and the King Philip's War was fairly uninteresting from my perspective.
Right.
But I did recall that his children were sold into slavery.
Oh, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that that's something that you knew. That's what
Yeah, it triggered something in my brain because later on, unless it's not true, later on they ended up having something to do with some pirates that I read about once.
No, that's very true.
It's very true.
So anyway, continue. I'm not trying to. I was like King Philip. What is that? Hang on. There's something there. I gotta go find. And then in like the 7th paragraph, they were like, and his kids were sold into slavery. And I was like, that's it. I remember now.
Yeah. Now, I'm getting the wrap-up sign for my sound guy here, but we're not wrapping up. This was going to be a long one anyway, and we're going to keep going with it after this break.
Doesn't matter if you're cooler, hottest than the cortisol president or lose a box. Doesn't matter if you're cooler, hottest than the cortisol president or lose a box.
And we're back with the Thanksgiving episode of Tattoo with Children. We've just established, again, that the American settlers were a bunch of opportunists and murderers and slavers, and that we celebrate that with holidays across the calendar, chief among them being Thanksgiving. Here's another part of the story that you might not know. What did they eat? Well, we've been told they ate turkey. We're in America.
Turkey is an animal that's up there.
Turkey is a bird that we have. We're told they ate turkey. They may have eaten turkey, but we have no reason to think that they did.
Why is that?
Well, we're told that they ate...
I've seen a painting. And
You've seen a painting, yes.
And there were, pictures imprint on my mind. There were Indians, and they were dropping fish in holes, and there was a turkey in the background.
And there was a cornucopia on the table where
Right.
they took like a horn of plenty, literally, and they stuffed it full of fruits and grapes that don't
Right.
exist in the Americas.
I'm
Right.
pretty sure that the horn of plenty is some sort of euphemism.
And,
I think it was, yes.
well, you would have to have a horn of plenty if you were around a bunch of bitches wearing black and white.
That's
For
right.
real.
Okay, anyway, so you're saying that the turkey in the painting was added there later also?
It was also added later. And I'm not positive. Like, for some reason, the turkey, as a bird in the Americas, was always considered almost sacred. Like, it was like, if you're gonna eat a bird, it should be a turkey. I think because of how hard it is to catch.
As a matter of fact, it was Benjamin Franklin who proposed that the turkey be the symbol of the United States as opposed to the American bald eagle.
Yes, he considered the bald eagle to be a filthy scavenging bird, and he's correct. But there's just something majestic about the bald eagle that is not present in the turkey.
It's probably the gobble.
It's the gobble. Let's be honest with you. It's the fucking... they're ugly as sin, granted, but the gobble. But they're also very clever, and so they're hard to catch. And I think that's what makes them so attractive. say, hey, look how much effort we put to put food on the table. We actually caught turkeys. But they may have been turkeys, but there probably weren't that many. It was probably goose and duck. Probably a lot of fucking duck is what they actually ate.
Goose isn't a bad thing either because I mean they fly from up that area,
Yeah.
and head on down south.
So my Canadian friend was much more correct than I was when I yelled at him.
You know what duck makes me think of?
What's that?
John Mulaney, quack quack.
Oh.
Anyway, continue.
I do.
I'm
I
sorry.
got that John Mulaney quote, but for my people of color, Shucky Ducky,
Okay, all right.
Shucky Ducky,
Yeah,
quack
yeah.
quack.
All right, continue.
All right,
What
so
about sides? Did they have stuffing and dressing?
no, there were no pies, no shit. Like they didn't have desserts. They had this was a harvest festival, so they were eating like pumpkin.
Desserts.
They were eating pumpkin and they were eating like that hard corn, not the good sweet corn, but like the stones, like just rocks that you boil until they turn into a mush.
Yeah.
They ate that, and then
Yeah.
they ate the deer that the Indians brought.
Mush was really popular. Mush
was
and
very
venison.
popular.
Yeah,
It
mush
went by
was-
many names.
Right, and it
Gruel.
had many things in it.
Yeah. Oh, oftentimes insects. Insects
Right.
were a big thing.
Right.
And they ate the deer that the Indians brought, like the food the Indians brought, and they brought some more Indian staples. They got this dish that's similar to poi, where they take like a bunch of like native leaves and shit and mash them into this paste and make you eat that.
Leafy paste.
They had like mostly what they did was they did a lot of weed. They smoked and they ate hallucinogens a lot.
So yeah, the separatists being so religious wouldn't have drank alcohol, but they
No.
probably got high.
But they did get high.
That's God's leaf.
that's perfectly allowed. So the food wasn't what you think, and like in general the whole day wasn't what you thought, but it did get passed down to us in this tradition that we glommed onto, and that we made a holiday around. And that holiday itself, modern day, has also its own kind of set of myths associated with it, right? Mm-hmm. Like what it is, what it's supposed to be, and how it works. I'm curious as to how your modern day Thanksgivings play out. Because my Thanksgivings, I learned later on, were not quite typical to other people's Thanksgivings. Like a lot of people had Thanksgivings that were really, and this has happened in my family, where we got together and a bunch of family got together and we all like just had a bunch of fun, like playing games and eating. But really, my Thanksgivings have always been, my mother slaves over in the kitchen for like a day and a half. Mm-hmm. We put all the food out. We each get a plate, sit down, and watch the Cowboys and Indians battle it out, because that's what happens on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys and the fucking Redskins
Right.
battle it out with the fucking Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And then we all go to sleep and don't talk. That's typically all my Thanksgivings. I've had Thanksgiving since then,
Right.
with other people at other people's houses, and it's completely different. There's fun and there's frolic and there's different desserts and there are different games you play, and it's like, all right guys, time for charades. Like what? So how do you guys do Thanksgiving? Typically.
Ooh, well, I mean, there's a pretty big difference between how I did Thanksgiving growing up and how I do Thanksgiving now.
Okay.
Primarily, growing up in the Northeast, the food is a staple. My dad and my godmother did the cooking.
Uh-huh.
I kind of split that up. And then we kind of did that same thing. Sit around and enjoy the day and not really do too terribly much. There was a few times we, as I got older, that we'd go outside and play football. We'd actually, play the game rather than just watch the game. But nowadays, my Thanksgiving generally consists of me being the kitchen slave. I'm the chef for that.
Kitchen bitch is what you call you do.
And yeah. And so but I actually stopped baking. I love to bake, but I stopped baking and just, buy the desserts. My mother-in-law's a provider of desserts because she'll go to a special event where they're selling like good homemade desserts and just buy a whole bunch. So I don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
And then we do watch football games, and honestly, I think that's when the purchasing begins. The holiday season purchasing begins there, and now I'm sitting there going, okay, what can I get now for the kids at a better price?
Yeah.
Things like that.
And I think that's really the purpose of the holiday now.
Yeah.
All right. So I heard from CIO knows sacrilege. He doesn't bake homemade anymore. That's against Jesus. Go ahead, Ben.
So we, I mean, we don't get everybody together. What I mean by that is I have a very large family. And then a lot of us are married. So that would be like 400 people. So that's a bad idea. So generally my parents put on a thing for lunch. And my mom does cook, but because there's so many kids, she'll only make like one or two things. So like, let's say she handles the potatoes. Okay, so that means mashed potatoes, that means chopped potatoes, it means whatever, right? And then like my brother Sam will bring the turkey.
Okay.
My brother Phil will do the ham. My brother Andy will bring green bean casserole.
So it's almost like a potluck.
Yeah, in a big way, it's a potluck, and there are a lot of us. So that's usually at noon, and then everybody kind of like chills out. Okay, and now it is changing. I think is why I'm struggling with how to tell you. So that was more my childhood, right there. I mean, or my early adolescence, early adulthood.
Right.
And then everybody just chills out till the Cowboys come on at 2 or 3, and then we watch the game, and then we go home. So it's generally a 5 or 6 hour affair.
Okay.
Now this year, and in years past, it's a little different because so I have Thanksgiving at lunch with my family, and then I have Thanksgiving at supper with my wife's family.
Okay.
And a lot of that is due to like dietary restrictions and stuff. So
Exactly.
So we do the less fatty tradition in the evening. So we don't have as much like carbs and meat and stuff in the evening. We have more like salad and pasta and stuff.
Okay, I feel you.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I say, we all go to my mom's house, and then I moved to Virginia, and so I did one time, I think, where I flew back from Thanksgiving, and then I decided to never do that again. And so we started having Thanksgiving just on our own, just me and my wife. And we would go to other people's houses if we were invited, which we were invited off to Virginia. It eventually just got to the point where I realized that if I'm thankful all year, it's not necessary for me to be thankful, especially that day. And so I started trying to work every Thanksgiving, which is very interesting because I am black and my wife is Mexican. And Mexicans, I figured out, don't really celebrate Thanksgiving. They like to spend their Thanksgiving either working or doing some other activity that they do daily. Like it's not really a strong holiday for them. And so I sort of just kind of fell into that pattern where like people would gather at my parents' house for Thanksgiving and I wouldn't. I would send a representative. And but that started a trend. And so less people started going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving, and so my parents started cooking less for Thanksgiving. They started experimenting for Thanksgiving, cooking different things. And so now it's gotten to the point where this year Thanksgiving's at my sister's house. I couldn't get on a work schedule this Thanksgiving to my complete chagrin. So I'm actually going to be in attendance for Thanksgiving this year. I don't know when we'll eat. Like this is my sister's first year doing it.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I empathize with her.
It's going to be very interesting. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure she's going to like cook, and my mother's going to show up with like the complete Thanksgiving dinner.
Ooh.
And then I'm going to show up because I asked, do you want to bring anything there? Like, we don't have any sodas. Like, I'm not bringing you fucking soda. And so my daughter is making a mac and cheese.
Okay.
And I've got 3 or 4 Cajun steaks that I'm marinating right now. So it's going to be a competing Thanksgiving, I think, is what's going to happen here. I think it's going to be a very interesting time to be had by all. I'm looking forward to it just to see if we fight.
Are y'all going to watch the Cowboys?
Definitely. For sure. No. This is a tradition
And by
that
the way,
goes back too far.
they don't play the Redskins anymore.
Yeah, they don't play the Redskins anymore.
They just play a bunch of different people.
I think the Lions picked up the slack for a while there.
They did, but now the Lions have their own game. They're
Yeah.
the early game in the East.
Yep.
Super smart move by the Lions, by the way.
Very smart move.
Props to them for becoming the early America's team, because that way I don't have to talk to my in-laws. And so the Cowboys are playing the Bills.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, that's Buffalo Bills.
That's completely not a game I want to see. I don't want to see that ever.
That's not going to be, but it still, I think, follows the American tradition of,
Oh, yeah,
of
no,
Cowboys and Indians.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And also, it's going to be a great game. I'm sorry, the Bills are actually better than most people.
I mean,
let on.
well, it may be a great game, but I just want to see it.
Right? No, I understand.
But you bring up an interesting point, though. You say, now I don't have to talk to my in-laws. The other part about Thanksgiving, that's always, all right, we got all the family together again. We're all
Right.
happy to see each other. We're all grateful for Uncle Ted and Aunt Alice
No,
and all of our cousins.
We're not.
Dude, that's not true.
We're not.
We do not want to see our families
I honestly wish Uncle Ted had died sometime this year, so
God.
Thanksgiving would have been better.
What's the problem with Uncle Ted?
Look. Oh, all right.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to realize at some point around 10:30 that I've forgotten that it is in fact Thanksgiving. So I'm going to be heading to work like any other Thursday. And someone will let me know and remind me that I cannot in fact go to work.
Right.
And I'll be like, okay, what? Oh, right, it's Thanksgiving.
I have to do this.
Right. Then I will immediately begin regretting how little alcohol I have in the house and how
Right.
little I planned.
Hey, just make sure you take home those bottles of wine.
Oh, no. Why do you think I haven't been giving them away to clients?
That's
when,
right. That's
when we
your-
first bought Empathy Wines, I was handing that shit out like candy.
It was.
But now we got this last shipment of Empathy Wines Red, and I knew for a fact that I am light on alcohol at the house.
That's
and
the
so I'm
Thanksgiving
like,
wine.
that's my Thanksgiving wine. So I'm going to start hitting that shit about 11:15.
That's too early.
Okay, but you got to remember I'm a lightweight. So, in other words, if I have a glass of wine before lunch, I'm going to have a hard time walking over to my parents. Which my
Right.
parents, I live on 6 acres in the woods. You got to walk around the pond to my parents' 10 acres.
Yeah, you don't want to end up in that pond.
Yeah, no, you don't.
That fucker's deep at
Yeah.
spots.
So that, and then once I get there, I'm going to pray to the baby Jesus, that
Yes.
the Jesus of Ricky Bobby, that
Jesus in
That-
the manger.
right, tiny 8-pound, 5-ounce baby Jesus,
Can't even hold your head up, Jesus.
that my other brothers have taken it upon themselves to plan better than I do.
Right.
And that there will be some assortment of 5 to, as there was last year, 45 bottles of whiskey on the counter when I get there.
Uh-huh.
And that I can partake in that also.
So in my experience with the family portion, the food, my mother's a great cook, okay? All of my food acumen comes from watching her and tasting her stuff. She's a great cook, and so she can bring people from quite a distance to her house if they know she's cooking. But it's always certain people that you just don't want to see. So everything's fine, everything's good, then a certain person will show up and fuck. do I have to do this again? I have a particular aunt that is this way, where it's like, I love you as a person. I just don't want to see you, because she's very religious, but religious only if you're watching. You know those people?
Yeah.
You know, it's like she'll get on television and crow about Jesus.
Yes. The quantum religious. Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. So the religious when observed, and it grates on my nerves to be around her, and so I try to avoid her, but I can't avoid her in these group gatherings, and so I have an honest fear that I'll be in a perfectly fine situation, and I'm getting along with my parents for the first time, and getting my sister for the first time, and all of a sudden, Uncle Frank will show up, and I'm like, what the fuck? How did you find the house?
Nice.
Did you give him the address?
We
Right.
fucking moved to not have to deal with Uncle
Right.
Frank.
Now this is very different than my childhood, though.
Yeah.
Because in my childhood, my parents would invite fucking everybody.
Right.
Like my dad would go get a turkey and meet like 12 people there.
Right.
And then you show up for Thanksgiving, and you're like, who the fuck are these 12 people? And he's like, well, it's the guy that cut the turkey, and then it's his family, and then it's his friend, and then there was a little old lady buying bologna, and I invited her too. And I'm like, what the fuck?
And I never know what's going. But that's my problem, is I never know what I'm going to see. Like, it could be just my parents, my siblings, and our kids.
Right.
Which is like, I mean, that's fine. Or it could be my parents, my siblings, our kids, and literally 1,000 other motherfuckers who I don't want to talk to. And they're all going to want to talk to me because I never talked to them. And so they're going to be like, hey, what are you up to? I'm like, I'm up to things, but I don't want to tell you because I don't want to talk to you.
You can tell them, hey, I'm doing a podcast now.
I'm not telling them that because then they'll want to listen to this podcast and know I'm talking about them. Yes, I'm talking about you.
We are talking about you.
It is no offense. I love you as my family. Just don't talk to me. I'm sorry. Just don't talk to me. But I think that's more typical of actual Thanksgiving. So you start to question in your mind, why do we keep doing this? Right? Why are we celebrating this thing if all we want to do is eat? Can't we just eat?
Because everybody else does.
It's because everyone else does, A, and B, because we're told to. Right? We walk into a store. You walk into a store before Thanksgiving, and what do you see?
Turkey.
Turkey.
Yeah, there's like pictures of turkey, and there's like cartoons of turkey, and there's like a turkey contest, and
And
there's
Happy Thanksgiving on November the 2nd. You know, like everybody, all of our programming starts clicking over into enjoy your Thanksgiving. Why is that? Well, is a Thanksgiving industry? It's an industry, but not a huge industry. Like at this point, if you go into the grocery store, you'll see 1,000 frozen turkeys just sitting there. And they're going to stay there. People already bought their goddamn turkey, right?
They'll go
Right.
on deep discount right after.
They'll go on huge discounts afterwards because they overbought, because everybody overbuys.
Get yourself some discounted turkeys and save it for, another time of year. Put it
I
in a freezer.
think that today we are still told to do Thanksgiving for one reason only. Because then they can say, hey, here's your Black Friday sale paper.
It's been the slowly building, commercialization factor that's surrounding our traditions. It's tradition, and we have this tendency, I think, to stick to traditions very hard, and then that can be used to help us along the way to give some credibility to a certain kind of marketing involved, because
Yes.
at our core, we're no different than those original separatists that came over here to Plymouth.
We're still chasing the bag, people, but we're doing it at a certain expense of, I think, our personal growth and fulfillment. Like, you should be thankful. Everybody should have gratitude. There should be something that you're thankful for every day, at the very least. By making a Thanksgiving holiday that has become about what you can get the next day. That's my problem. It's not about giving thanks anymore. It's about what do I get if I do this?
Yeah.
You know, can I get approval from my parents? Can I get show up my cousin? You know, show up my siblings. Can I show off my kids? What can I get out of this? And then the next day, now I get cheap stuff that I can't get other times of the year. It's the expensive stuff is now cheap for this one day only.
Yeah.
And then after being thankful and with your family and loving, right?
Right.
You then go and literally elbow an old lady in the neck for a flat screen TV that's on sale. And you say, hey, Ray, you're being a little bit unfair. That's not true because I have witnessed that exact thing. An old lady took an elbow in Best Buy to the throat.
Yeah.
2 years ago over a flat screen TV in front of my very goddamn eyes. I'm not lying, people. I saw it.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that's a good thing. I believe that our Black Friday is a direct result of the original story of the Separatists and the Indians.
The true story.
The true story of the Separatists and the Indians. Like, this is our true character. Our true character is, I will show you what I need to show you in the beginning because I'm going to get you in the end.
Right.
Like, that's our actual holiday that we're celebrating, right? Am I wrong?
I don't
Guys?
think so. I think we're celebrating capitalism.
We're celebrating capitalism,
I think it's capitalism.
and we're celebrating exploitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, obviously, I don't feel that it's appropriate to celebrate exploitation without some realization that that's what you're exactly doing. But on the note of celebrating capitalism, I don't have a problem with it. The problem I have is being honest about it. You know?
If you're honest about it, who would celebrate it?
I have no problem with celebrating the fact that we like to spend money, that we like to consume things.
I mean, do you in that case, can we get rid of Thanksgiving and then just have 2 sale days instead of 1 sale day?
Yeah, I think we could celebrate, like we could just call it Black Friday.
Just call it Black Friday.
But
That's the holiday.
But again, I think that the point that you've been making is a good one. It's something to consider. But this goes back to Joseph Campbell's and Freud and Jung, that argument that essentially what the brain needs is stories. So
Sure.
in other words, if we say we're celebrating Black Friday, no one's going to agree.
No one will agree with that. Exactly.
We need a story. But does that story have to be true? Could that story be true?
See, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with telling the wrong story first to make the correct story. In other words, if the story of Thanksgiving ended up being like the story that they told originally, the original story of the Pilgrims and the Indians and the friendship, if that would happen today, I would be all for it. I'd say, okay, you had to make some twists and turns, but we got to a good place. I just don't think Thanksgiving is in a good place. I think we're in a harsh place with Thanksgiving because I don't see people who say Thanksgiving is coming and then they go, yay. Do you see that?
I can understand that.
I see people who say, hey, Thanksgiving's around the corner. They go, fuck. Oh, my God, Thanksgiving. And they rub their temples, and they begin thinking about all the shit that could go wrong and all the shit they got to do and all the people they got to see, and they just feel bad.
Yeah. And it seems like you and me are kind of on, not opposite, but complementary but different positions on this, where I don't have a problem, with celebrating capitalism or anything like that. And I don't think you would either if that was the origin of the story,
Yeah, right. I wouldn't, really.
But the origin of the story and where we're at now don't agree.
Yes, the origin story and where we're at now don't agree. And I don't think that continuing the lie is useful because we can all see the truth. It's in other words, we have this disconnect between what is happening in reality and what we're told is happening, and that is causing so much stress, right? The disconnect, trying to fit the disparate views in our mind, in our souls, that it's causing depression.
Yeah.
It causes this severe depression where you don't want to eat food, you don't want to see your family, you don't even want to watch the fucking game anymore.
Right.
You just want it all to be over before it starts. I believe that this is one of the things that makes it so hard to get through the first part of the year, because it starts here, then it rolls directly into Christmas,
Right.
which is another one, right? Christmas is another highly stressful part of the year that should not be stressful, because we're not supposed to be doing anything bad.
Right. And this piece of the conversation is probably going to have to wait for another podcast episode, but I really start wondering, when you make that connection, how much our current divisiveness, socio-political climate has to do with the effect on these holidays.
I think a lot of it has to do with trying to hold two things in your head that are so opposite and trying to make them the same thing. Like, I don't think it's a problem to say, like, this is A and this is B. When you have A and B and say, no, they're both equal, you're like, no, that's not true.
Right.
Like, inside it's not true, but they keep telling you that it's true. And I think that is it causes you to twist yourself in such a way that you can be manipulated into thinking that black is white. Does that make any sense to you, Ben?
Yeah.
What I just said?
Say it again.
I was saying that holding disparate views.
Sorry, I was trying to create havoc on social media.
Okay. I'm just
I
saying.
apologize.
I'm sure I'm going to read about that in a little bit. It's going to say, hey, I heard you do a podcast. I said, yeah, fuck you. Why? Did you read what happened on Twitter while you were doing your fucking podcast, asshole? No, I was just talking.
Okay.
So I was saying that the psychological stress of having to think that two things that are well far apart or close together are the same thing causes a psychological, a psychotic break of sorts.
Yeah, one of the things that bugs me about both of these, and I think I misspoke. I think I called it capitalism. It's not capitalism. It's consumerism. And I think, and I think the point that you're making now, the point that you made that you're attempting to make now is basically that we're forced into these. In other words, we don't choose when we don't choose to have dinner with these people on a normal basis.
Right.
If I want to have a good dinner, if I want to have a good whiskey, if I want to have then I'm going to do it on my terms.
Right.
But this one time a year, I have to fucking do it on someone else's terms.
Exactly.
And I don't like, by the way, and I don't appreciate, I am not grateful for this, how you're becoming the rational voice of the podcast. And I'm becoming the rage voice of the podcast. I don't know how you've done this, but I'm going to get Mike to figure it out so that you can get back to the rage and I can be rational. But it pisses me the fuck off. Like, this is the reason I don't do, fucking, what is the Cupid holiday?
Valentine's Day.
Look, man, 1997, me and my girl were talking about getting married. And I was like, okay, look, this is a big deal. And she was like, what? And I was like, if you give a shit about this holiday, we're done.
Right.
Because I'm not doing it.
Right.
And she said, why? And I said, because I do nice things for you all year. And I actually mean it.
Right.
Like, so January 27th, which is a date that means fucking nothing, I take you chocolate. February 11th, I buy you flowers, also a day that means nothing. March 7th, when everybody else is watching basketball, I take you out of town to a nice restaurant.
Right.
April 17th, 2 days after I find out how much money I got to give the government, I buy you that thing you mentioned 6 months ago.
Right.
I do this all fucking year. I will not be told when to be nice to you.
Right.
And I don't know why I have to get told when to celebrate that I'm grateful and when I have to hang out with Uncle Ted. Because fuck Uncle Ted.
It's not only that it's a day where you're dictated what you eat, you're also dictated when you eat, how much you eat, and who you eat with.
Right. It has to be overeating.
Yes.
Because we're goddamn Americans. I'm like, hey, Mom, I've had 3 plates. I'm done. She's like, cool, I have this Igloo cooler of leftovers for you to take home.
And literally, you are in a coma.
Right.
At that point. I mean, like you're literally, legally in a coma. You know, like this isn't like, the sleep after a Thanksgiving Day meal is not normal sleep, people. Like, I know you guys think you're taking a nap. You're not taking a nap at all. You are actually passing out from this world and struggling to get your way back.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah, you wake up gasping for breath, and then people like put more turkey breast in your mouth.
I mean, like you wake up, it's like, all right, sandwiches.
Normally,
Sandwiches?
I don't have a problem with people putting breasts in my mouth.
I
that had to
understand.
happen.
I understand that, but there again, you wake up, people stuff turkey breast in your mouth, and then you look over because you feel the eyes, and you realize Uncle Ted's been watching you the entire time. Like, what the fuck is that shit?
And
if
like,
you're gonna stare at me while I sleep, go home.
And that's the other part. So, okay, now that you've got all these people in your house, you fed them to the point of bursting, they all need to sleep. Where are they going to sleep? Your couch, your bed, your back room. Like, now these people can't fucking leave.
Right.
Now they're too fucking food drunk to get out of the house. Like,
Right.
oh my God.
And then it's like 10:45 at night, and you're like, okay, I'll see you next year, Uncle Ted.
Everybody out.
Well, I did want to tell you about that one, there's this new thing the kids are doing. It's called Amway. And that's when you slit his throat,
Right.
take his head, chop it off with a hammer, stick it on a spike, and go, that's what real Thanksgiving means.
That was Thanksgiving. It'll be there for 25 years. Well, that's how I feel about Thanksgiving, guys. I hope your Thanksgiving was awesome. Mine will probably be awesome as well. We will know by the time this posts because that's the way we do things at Tattoo with Children, which is what you're listening to, Tattoo with Children. I have been your host, Flavor Ray, and you can find Tattoo with Children on Facebook at Tattoo with Children and on Instagram on Tattoo with Children. You can find us on Twitter at Tattooed With. You can find me on Twitter at Hunter Vanguard, as one word, Hunter Vanguard. You can find me on Instagram at Madara Shadow. You can find Ben, Pirate Ben, at Black Crow Brother on IG and at Black Spot Tattoo Company. You can find Mike Payne at CIO Payne on IG and at Payne.points on IG. That's Payne spelled Payne. Guys, I am truly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, truly thankful for all the people who listen to Tattoo with Children. I am thankful that you listen. I'm thankful that there is a platform where I can record something for you to listen to. It fills me up every time I do it, and I hope to keep doing it for years and years to come. Thank you from Flavor Ray. Guys,
Peace out.
Gobble, gobble.
love you.
We were born to bring it back, but it's more than basic. It's a portion of his rap at the core is ancient. It's supported like a pack of some warm